If I had to restart my cybersecurity career from scratch, this is the 6-month roadmap I'll follow. For those of you who don't know, my name is Terrell and I'm currently working as a security engineer in New York City, and I got into cybersecurity without a degree. I'm going to provide you one of the most efficient paths you can take to maximize how much you learn and your earning potential while you get into cybersecurity. Just want to be as transparent as possible and set expectations before I start. This video is going to assume that you already have a basic understanding of what computers are in IT, a basic understanding of things like networking, Windows, Linux, and just basic IT troubleshooting. Okay, so starting with months 1 and 2, this time is going to be spent really building your foundation of security and IT. One of the main goals during this month is going to be to study for and pass your Security Plus exam. Security Plus matters because it will give you credentials in the industry. Most hiring pools, HR teams have to determine who are the right candidates for the job, strictly based off credentials and resumes. Having Security Plus gives you a much higher chance at passing the stage. Security Plus will cover a couple different domains, some including networking fundamentals, Windows and Linux, authentication and authorization, and basic security concepts like the CIA triad. Security Plus often isn't enough on its own to get you a job, but it does give you a solid foundation to build on and helps you stand out in the hiring process. Now, going into month 3, we're going to turn theory gained from Security Plus and other studying and a hands-on experience. Labs are important because they prove the skills that you actually have. Hiring managers want evidence that you can actually use the tools on the job. There can be a pretty wide range of projects to put together. I normally recommend things more blue team related, like configuring a SIM and log analysis. It's important that you spend a lot of time in this month getting a deep understanding of what you're doing and not just copying videos. It's good to break things and be forced to troubleshoot. This will really reinforce some of the theories that you learned in the previous months. One of the last steps in this phase is going to be to show your work. This includes LinkedIn posts, keeping a GitHub repository with all your projects, screenshots, and full write-ups of what you worked on. These are all things that you want to put on your resume that'll help you land your first job. As we go into month 4, you want to spend some more time polishing your projects and starting the application process. I'll be making a video pretty soon on resumes because it's its own topic in its own, but there are many guides available and you can also use AI to make sure that your resume is strong. For the first role, I'll also apply for jobs under a pretty broad range of IT and security. I think a lot of people wait way too long until you start applying. Some of the goals here are to get paid while you learn, and even if your first job isn't in security, you can use those skills to land a security role easier than if you did not have a job or weren't working in a tech adjacent role. I also want to make it very important to caveat this section because there will be some outliers. Some people will be able to skip IT completely depending on your background and how fast you can learn. Okay, now going into month 5. At this point, you should already have a solid resume and some pretty high quality projects, and you should have already submitted a few job applications. Now we can start a full-on interview prep and also increase the amount of jobs that we're applying for. For the interview prep, I will focus on basic security questions. I'll also leave a GitHub link in the description below with my guide for studying and passing security interviews. But also based on the job that you're interviewing for, you want to plug the job description into an LLM of your choice like ChatGPT or Claude and have it generate some interview questions specific to that role that you're interviewing for. Now, just for some basic targets that you want to try to hit, I'll share what worked for me and what helped me land a job pretty fast. I apply for about 10 jobs a day. I also use platforms like LinkedIn to reach out to hiring managers and recruiters for the roles that I was applying for. You can also do things like attend local conferences such as B-Sides so you can meet people that may be able to refer you to a company. I would also recommend applying for roles where you fit at least 60% of the qualifications. You want to make sure that you don't disqualify yourself from a job that you could be a good fit for. Another thing I want to emphasize during this step is that applying for jobs can be very repetitive, and you want to make sure that you build some type of system for yourself that reduces the time that's spent doing manual tasks during this process. For me, it was a combination of AI and different browser plugins that allow me to apply for most job applications within 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, now for month 6. One of the goals for this month is to strengthen any weak areas that you have, whether that's interviewing or your resume or even concepts in security that you're still not fully grasping. You can also add a more advanced project to your resume at this point from one of those niches that you picked. A few examples could be security operations, GRC, or even IAM. This step makes you become a more well-rounded candidate, and it also gives you experience in a specific domain that interests you the most. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is spending too much time in the planning phase and not enough time actually putting those things into action. You don't need to wait a whole year before you start applying for jobs. Another thing to remember is it's a numbers game, so you really want to spend a lot of time making sure your resume, your projects, and your strategy for applying for jobs is the best that it can be. This isn't the only roadmap, but based on my experience, if I had to restart, this is the path that I would take to start working in cybersecurity.